Hey everybody, a couple weeks back somebody recommended that I do a little brow tutorial, so that's what we're going to be getting into today. I really prefer a filled in brow but still very natural, a little bit full, and not too precise looking. I definitely think back like 5 years ago or even like 3 years ago that a very perfectly sculpted brow was very popular because of like Instagram trends and all that. But for a daily basis, I feel like just doing a nice kind of natural, fluffy, but full brow looks the most natural. So I'm going to be giving you all of my tips, my favorite products, my recommendations for how to get that kind of a look, and I'll just kind of be walking you through that whole process. This isn't going to be how to like tweeze or trim or shape your brows that way. If you want to see that, I do have another video on those techniques and all my recommendations for that. So I will link that down below if you want to see that video. This will just be how to fill it in for like a makeup look. So jumping right in, let's talk about the tools that you're going to want. Basically, you don't need a whole lot. The first thing I would recommend having is a spoolie brush. A spoolie brush is great to just kind of brush the brow hairs up and make sure that they're staying right in place where you want them, and you can get a good look at what needs to be filled in and what has already been kind of filled in enough. Next up, this one's pretty obvious, is to have a mirror of some kind. I like to have one that has a magnifying side as well. That's not necessary, but it is nice if you want to get kind of a really close look and make sure that you're not missing anything up close. But yes, definitely have a mirror of some kind to do your brows. Lastly, really all that you need is the brow product that you want to use. My preferred way of filling in my brows is with either a micro pencil, which is just a very, I'll show you. They just have a very fine tip. I like micro pencils because you can fill in very, very detailed small brow strokes and it doesn't get too overboard or too filled in very fast. And then my other preferred product for filling in brows would be a brow powder. You can really get specific brow hair strokes with a brow powder without going too overboard and making it look very makeup-y at all. If you are using a brow powder, you'll also want to have an angled brush, something very small and precise to help draw on those little tiny hair-like strokes will be best. If your brows are already very thick and you have a lot of hairs and not very many sparse areas, I would definitely recommend looking into a more creamy formula like a brow pomade or a thicker brow pencil. Something like this where the product is a little bit creamier and it comes out a little bit thicker. That way, if you don't have a lot of sparse areas, your brows are already thick, it's kind of mimicking the thickness of your brows that you already have, and it's a little bit quicker to fill them in that way. For most people, I think that a micro pencil or a brow powder is the best way to go. I'll put my recommendations of those down below of ones that I really love. Today I'm going to be using this CoverGirl Ultra Fine Brow Pencil in Honey Brown. I really like this brow pencil. I think that it works really well. This honey brown color is perfect for my skin tone, my brow hairs, and all of that. One thing with my package is when I pull the cap off, the whole pencil comes apart. You can see here, so that's kind of frustrating. And same on the other side, the whole thing comes off. So that's a little weird, but I have seen other people use this product that don't have that problem. So it's something that I definitely recommend aside from the packaging issue. So if you do have that, just take it back. I've been using it and making it work, but you definitely don't want to be working with a defective product because it can be super frustrating. But yeah, I'll list other recommendations for products that I love down below so that you can find them. One other brow product too that can be good in certain situations would be a brow pomade. A brow pomade can just give you a very harsh kind of like painted on brow look that looks very makeup-y, so I don't usually recommend it personally. But if you already have very thick brows that are already very full and don't have many sparse areas and you just need to add a little bit more, I guess, definition for kind of a more full coverage makeup look, then it can look really good. But I would say, yeah, more often than not, I recommend a skinny brow pencil or a brow powder. If you're new to doing brows, a brow powder will definitely be easier to work with than one of these brow pencils because it can just take longer and you almost have to be more precise with this. So if you're new to brows and you're just wanting to start working on filling in the right shapes and all that, definitely go in with a brow powder instead. One thing I see people struggle with a lot when filling in their brows is trying to make them both even. So one recommendation I have when filling in your brows is to work in sections and go back and forth between each of your eyebrows. So I'll do the base of this eyebrow just on this inner portion, and then I'll switch and do this side. That way, doing them side by side like that, it's easier to make sure that they are more similar or more comparable. So I like to start in the little inner corner of my eyebrows and draw a couple little hair-like strokes. The inside of your brow can end up looking very blocky and very unnatural if you're not careful. So you definitely want to work very softly with light pressure and light strokes to make sure that you don't end up with too much product on there too quickly. What I'll do is turn my brush sideways actually and gently just start feathering this on. It won't look like much at first, but it will be enough to add in a little bit of pigment and give our brows a more filled in look. The reason I like to turn my brush sideways as opposed to going straight up this way is if you're going in at your face, like straight in at your face, you end up putting a lot of pressure at the beginning of your stroke and then nothing at the top, so it just kind of looks like little dots, which you can see that already tends to happen anyways. So if you turn it sideways, you tend to have more even pressure all the way up, so it looks more like strokes as opposed to just getting little like dots on your face. That's just something that I've noticed for me personally. So I don't have too much on right now, but I'm going to just do that amount and then switch to the other side, keep filling in my brows, and then we'll come back to it and add more if we want to later. I never want to do too much to where I have to like go in and really kind of like scrub it off or use my spoolie to brush it out. I'd rather just do less is more, and then we'll come back and see how it looks. So I'll do the other side now. My brow on this side comes in a lot further than this side, so I'm going to draw some extra hair strokes in the center here to make sure that they look more symmetrical and that they come in the same distance on both sides. And while I'm still in this front area, I like to kind of do a couple light strokes up, just about that far in. I never want to do a line underneath because that can look too sculpted and too makeup-y. So I stick to just doing straight up hair-like strokes in the direction of my brow hairs. And then as my brow hairs start to kind of grow towards the sides instead of straight up, I'll start to angle my strokes with those brow hairs so that it looks more natural. Okay, so you can already see that that portion of the brows is looking a lot more even. I will say too that no two brows are ever going to be exactly identical, so don't stress out too much if they don't look exactly the same. That's so normal. Nobody's brows look that perfect ever. So I'm happy as long as they look very similar, but not exactly perfect. So I'm gonna leave that section and just start kind of working in under my brows to where my arch is. I like to make sure that this line continues straight all the way until my arch, so I have a lot of filling in to do right here. This is where I'll use just a little bit more pressure with my brush to make sure that I get some nice pigment there, but you still want to be careful not to make it look like too stripy, I guess, on your skin. So always start off with lighter pressure, less is more. That's always my makeup approach with anything, but especially in areas where you need to fill in a lot of pigment, you want to take it slow. Don't go too crazy all at once. So again, I'm going to continue my hair strokes out. I'm just going to be making this line straight. My hair strokes that I'm making at this point are a little bit more angled out and to the side than they were up, because now my hair is starting to go that direction, so I want my brows to match. Sometimes I don't get it perfect, and when I don't have any other makeup on or I'm doing a light makeup look, I can usually just use a little spoolie brush and kind of brush it out and retry. That's totally okay if you have to do that every so often. Sometimes these hairs go down really, really low and then it just looks so crazy and weird. So I'll just kind of brush it out or take my concealer brush with no extra product on it and just sort of swirl over it to blend it out and restart. That's totally normal. It's makeup. We're allowed to make mistakes and to retry it again. It washes off. It's no big deal. So you can see right here that I've just started to straighten out this line from the front of my brow to my arch. So I'm going to leave that there for now and mimic the same thing on the other side before we go too far on one brow. And again, I want to have a straight line, but I also don't want it to be too perfectly precise. I'm not looking to have it very like sculpted out or anything. I'm just looking for a similar shape, but to make it look like my hairs naturally grow that way, which we all know that they don't. That will just help to make them more even and still keep them really natural looking. Okay, so you can see there that the line on both sides is just straight out to my arch, but it's still not super perfected or anything like that. Now I'm going to continue out to my tail, and this is where my arches kind of start to go down, and I'm just going to follow the natural shape of my brows while kind of slimming to a point at the very end. Once I get to the tail, I'm not worrying too much about hair strokes because I just want them to be filled in, but I still don't want too much pigment. It's not like coloring inside the lines where I just want to completely color in every single portion of my brows. I just want to fill in what's sparse and make sure that they look even throughout and that they have the same shape. So you don't need to worry about completely filling in every single section of hair that falls within your brow lines, if that makes any sense. So just kind of take your time. You don't have to worry about brow strokes necessarily out here or making it look like little brow hairs, but you still don't want to be too heavy-handed or make them too filled in. And once I've got the line underneath done, I'll start to kind of build up the product on top and fill in that whole tail section. Now from here, I have the whole bottom side filled in and kind of in the shape that I want, and then I've gotten the tails filled in, and I'm starting to kind of fill in the middle section of hair just to make sure there's no sparse areas. Here's where I can be a little bit more kind of, I guess, less precise and just sort of make some light strokes throughout the center of my brows. And we haven't gotten to the top portion yet, but I'll just kind of work my way through the middle here and make sure there's no like sparse areas. And again, I'm being light. I'm not being as light-handed as I was in the front of my brow, but I'm still being light-handed with this because we don't want to go too overboard. Now, for me personally, I have a lot of sparse hairs on the top of my brows, so I like to have that a little bit more structured and filled in. If the top of your brows are very filled in already, you don't need to worry about adding too much pigment there, but see how mine are very sparse. I like to make sure that that's filled in so that my brows look nice and full and big. So I'm going to take the product in and kind of make the top of my brow a little bit more precise than I did on the bottom. A lot of people think that the bottom of your brow should be very precise and like a straight line, and that the top should be left more natural, but for me, I feel like that looks very unbalanced and a little bit weird. If you look in the mirror, in the video, whatever, I'm looking in the monitor, you get it. I think that it looks better actually if there's more definition on the top and a little bit more just kind of effortless, fluffy looking on the bottom, because that's where your hairs are stemming from, is from the bottom. So they're all growing in little different spots. They aren't growing in a straight line like that. The top of your brow hairs is where the hairs are kind of all growing out together, so they kind of give your brow a little bit more of a, I guess, filled in look, or like straight line look, if that makes any sense at all. That's just my personal preference though, so if you like it to be more sculpted on the bottom and you want a little bit more feathery on top, everyone's brows are different, everyone's preferences are different, so that is totally fine and completely 100% up to you. Do whatever you want. If you struggle with having natural looking brows though, try this out. It makes it a lot easier and quicker to fill in too when you make the top of your brow a little bit more precise and the bottom a little bit more like fluffy and less precise. And as far as the color of your brow hairs go, I would err on the light side rather than the dark side. It's obviously good to get a good match with your actual brow hairs, but if you're gonna do one or the other, I would go lighter than darker, just because that's gonna look the most natural. And while the trends of today are a really thick, bold brow, or not even bold, but thick, fluffy brow, if you go too dark, it can look a little bit angry. So make sure that you're getting a color that's a little bit softer if you want that big, fluffy look. A good rule of thumb is to match whatever your hair color is. If you're brunette, go 1 to 2 shades lighter for your eyebrow color. And if you're a blonde, go 1 to 2 shades darker for your eyebrow color. Once I've gotten to this point, I will then start to kind of run a spoolie through everything just softly and make sure that I'm not seeing any sparse areas and then everything still looks very natural. You can see I brushed this through and I can see a little bit of sparseness right there, so I'll definitely go in with a little more product there. And actually same on this side, I feel like these middle spots right here are missing a little color, so we'll go in and fill those in. Then we'll brush them through again and just make sure that everything looks okay. Again, they don't have to be 100% perfect, so even though there might be a couple areas that look a little bit sparse or uneven, I'm okay with that because I feel like that looks more natural. If you're curious about what shape would look best on you, how like intense to make your arch, how far out to bring the tails of your eyebrows, then you should definitely check out my other video I have on shaping and tweezing your eyebrows, which I will have linked down below. As far as like staying power of your brows too, I've never found a product except for that like Wonder Brow stuff that will stay on if I'm like scrubbing or rubbing at my brows throughout the day. So I would just say don't touch your brows. That's how to get them to last a little bit better. If you struggle with oily skin and your makeup kind of running off anyways, that can happen too on your eyebrows. So one thing I would recommend is before you go in and fill them in, you can take a translucent powder and a little small brush and sort of swirl the translucent powder through your brows. What this is going to do is going to kind of stop any oil production. Not any, but it's going to help kind of control your oil production throughout the day so that your brows don't slip and slide off as easily. If your eyebrow hairs kind of like fly around or move out of place or droop throughout the day or anything like that, you can definitely go in with a brow gel. The Benefit Gimme Brow is a favorite. The Glossier Boy Brow is a good one. The ColourPop Clear Brow Gel is really good too. I really like this Essence Make Me Brow. I just do like a I'll show you actually, might as well just put it on. I don't always do this, but just sometimes to give a little more definition to my hairs, I like to do this. So I'll just run it through. This is colored and it does have a little bit of like kind of fibers in it to give your hairs a thicker look. So I'll just kind of run it through and try to get my hairs kind of laying the way that I want. If you want a little bit more dimension added back into your eyebrows as well, and you've gone with a lighter brow color product, like a pencil or powder to fill them in, you can go in with a little bit of a darker brow gel, and it's not going to make too much of a difference, but it's just going to emphasize some of those hairs, give it a little bit more texture, and make them look a little bit more fluffy and filled in. So here's what my brows look like with that brow gel. It just sort of emphasizes the brow hairs and almost makes it look like I don't have any like brow product in and that I just have a lot of thick brow hairs. So this is a really good way to give you kind of that fluffy full look and hold your brow hairs in place throughout the day. So I think that was just about everything that I have for you today on brows. Here is the finished look. Again, they look very natural, just kind of like a little bit more elevated or perfected. Definitely not perfect, but that's sort of the look that I like. I like it to look like I don't really have any product on, and I feel like doing these techniques with these products really helps me to get that kind of a look. Hopefully this was helpful to you and hopefully you enjoyed. Definitely stay subscribed if you want to see more content from me. If you like this kind of how-to style video, give me a thumbs up and let me know what other kinds of how-tos you would like to see down below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that this was helpful to you and I will see you next time. Bye!